Red Ray Gun Limited presents
The Benji and Nick Show. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Oh, here we are.
Yeah, this old chair.
17th of February 2019.
Is it really? Good gosh. God, time flies, doesn't it?
Emails this week on TV and Jamie Anderson, allegedly. Anyway, yes, this is the Benji and Nick Show, and we discuss cult television.
We certainly do. It's our thing, isn't it? We're very good at it, I think.
In general. Well, I wouldn't venture to be so bold.
Good as in, you know, we can talk a lot.
We certainly talk.
Whether the words from our mouths are in any way interesting is another matter.
Yes, in every podcast we were selecting something randomly and spontaneously to discuss in the following podcast, but now we're mixing it up a bit, as I keep mentioning, you're probably bored of hearing. And, every other week we look at the emails and talk about emails that you send to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com. And that's me, Nicholas Briggs. He's Benji Clifford. Hello,
I'm .com.
We read those out, and we also talk about what we've been watching recently on the telly, which is bound to be mostly cult TV, although sometimes not. Any road up. We'll bother Jamie later and read out the emails in a bit. Benji, what have you been watching?
What have I been watching? Very good question.
Do
you know what? I've not actually been watching a lot of cult TV, funnily enough. I've not been watching a lot of... I know, it's terrible. Why am I on this podcast? I have been watching TV, however.
Yes.
I've watched two things. There's not an awful lot because I've been working and doing other stuff.
The test card.
I've been watching the test card and the little dot in the middle. I watched a documentary, a Netflix. They're both Netflix things. I watched a documentary on Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones, which was incredible. It was so good. Looking at how he got into the Stones and all that wonderful sort of blues music like Muddy Waters and B.B. King, Chuck Berry and all that stuff. Really cool. Don't know how the man's alive. I think if he hasn't done it already, I think it's his duty to donate his body when he passes away to medical science.
Yes, because there will be the secret of immortality.
There really will, because he still smokes and drinks. You think, blimey, he's in his 70s. He's lived a life of addiction and chaos, but he looks about 90 times older than he is. I mean, there are wrinkles on his face which have been longer on his face than castles in this country. It's just wild,
His wrinkles have got wrinkles.
So I watched that, and then last night I watched something which is a bit different for me, which is the Netflix film of... have you ever heard of Death Note?
No.
So
was that it?
That was it. It was very good, actually. The Forbidden Note. I'm not into like Japanese anime things or anything like that, but this was a live action Netflix film, and so I thought I'll give it a go, and it was actually very good. It got terrible.
Japanese?
It wasn't Japanese. It was like an American adaptation of a Japanese anime. I'm not normally into that sort of thing, but it was very good. The film, actually, the live action one, got pretty poor reviews because it wasn't like the cartoon. But the concept is really cool. That there's a book just falls out the sky into this guy's lap, and it's a book where he can write anybody's name in the book and how they die, and it will happen. And he has 48 hours in which he can essentially control their will up until the point in which they die.
Right, so it's that kind of note. I see.
It's that kind of note, and so there's like he has a big demon behind him which kind of eggs him on to do stuff. But the interesting thing...
Was that like a CGI demon or a glove puppet?
It's a CGI demon, a very good one actually. But the interesting thing about this that I like is that he chooses to use his book to do good. And so he starts using the book to kill notorious criminals and, gangs of murderers and terrorists and paedophiles and people like that. And he creates this sort of god. He calls it Kira. And he says that all these deaths are down to this one thing called Kira, and he wants to kind of give people hope that this god is getting rid of all the bad people and that. But of course then the authorities make a link and say, well, this is all This all seems too convenient, so I don't believe it. So it's all a big game of like cat and mouse, where he's trying to do.
You're making me want to watch this.
It's quite good, honestly.
Is it set in Japan?
It's set in America. It's like an American adaptation. It's a bit like, have you ever seen Donnie Darko?
Yes.
It's it's kind of like they're going for the Donnie Darko kind of vibe, with this being a bit weird and out there. Directed by the bloke who directed the Blair Witch Project. So
right.
It's one of those things. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm keen to watch the Japanese version to see the differences. I really liked it, so I would actually recommend that.
Ooh, and it's a Netflix production, or they're just showing it on Netflix?
Yeah, Netflix production. It's about 2 years old. I think it came out 2017. They're doing a sequel, I know that. So
despite the bad reviews, it's popular.
Well, I think from what I gather, I think it got poor reviews because people are comparing it to the Japanese anime, which was incredibly popular.
Yes.
But for me, coming from not seeing the original, I just went and thought, this is brilliant, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
There'll probably be a dubbed version of the anime as well.
There is. I think it's on Netflix has the Japanese one, but it's all in Japanese with subtitles. But YouTube is the dub version, so I'm just going to watch it on there, aren't I? Really. Apart from watching that, I've just watched plenty of Twilight Zones because they're quick and non-committal. You can just. I watched one of my favourite ones yesterday, which was The Fever. Have you ever seen that one?
Oh, remind me what that's about.
The chap and this bloke and his wife went a holiday to Vegas, and he says, we're not going to gamble. He says, we value the currency. We're not going to waste it away. Then, of course, he gets addicted to gambling and eventually is hunted down by the machine itself. It's amazing, actually, really good.
Well, no, I don't remember ever seeing that one. Of course, we were thinking about doing a commentary for Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's correct.
But for various technical reasons, we haven't done that. So we both watched that one recently, and I hadn't seen it for years and years and years. And there is a tour de force performance by William Shatner, looking utterly terrified. Yeah.
With lots of sprayed on water on his face when he's looking
sweating.
But it's funny though, because I can never go on a plane without actually thinking about that. For not a lot out of terror, it just always makes me think about it, and he's sat there, looks over and.
For anyone who doesn't know, it's about a man who's had a nervous breakdown, and he had a nervous breakdown on an aeroplane, and he's allegedly recovered. He gets on a plane, he's very nervous, and when he looks out the window during a storm, there's a sort of demon, a gremlin, he actually calls it, a gremlin on the wing, who every time he tries to get someone else to look, the demon flies away again in a rather hilarious way. It's sort of
it's dreadful in that respect.
It's on a Kirby wire. You don't see the wires cleverly because of course it's raining, it's a storm, so that sort of smothers the fact that there's a wire there, and it just flies off backwards in a kind of see ya sort of way.
I love the way you can see the foot pads as well of the suits in which it's wearing, like the soles of leather which have been sewed on.
Well, yeah, it looks like a sort of comedy party costume, doesn't it? It doesn't look like an actual costume for a TV series, and it's got ridiculous makeup on its face. But for me, it starts interfering with the running of the airplane. It's kind of tempted to put its hand in front of the propeller. That's how old this episode is, and then starts pulling the cowling off one of the engines, and he challenges, he keeps telling people this is happening and they think he's nuts, but he nicks a gun off a policeman on board and eventually opens the emergency window, which he just happens to be sitting next to, and shoots the thing, and off it goes. And of course he nearly
kills everyone.
Yeah, he kills everyone in the process. Opening a window at 20,000 feet is not advisable, listeners.
Not very wise.
But he does shoot the thing, and then he's just carted off in a stretcher at the end, and they all think he's doolally. But then, of course, they pull back and reveal that the cowling of the plane, although it's safe and has landed, has been ripped up by the engine. So he wasn't mistaken.
Whoa.
But for me, the most effective shot is when he's sitting there and he's decided not to look out of the window, and he's pulled the curtain, and he's sitting there, and the curtain is pulled, and you've got a profile shot of him and the curtain, and you know he wants to pull it back, and he's trying not to, and I think he puts his hand up a couple of times and pulls it down. Then he pulls it up, and the blooming thing's face is pressed right against the window, which is
horrible,
utterly horrible. Yeah, even though it's a ludicrous, and it's kind of looking in a kind of mindless, sort of way, you know. And the movie went further. The thing was absolutely demonic and horrific, wasn't it? It was this sort of
a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it, in the movie?
Yes, I'd like to go back, and I haven't seen the movie for years.
See, I'm a bit of a loyalist to the original series, so I didn't enjoy the movie as much as I wanted to, but I might have to go back and see it again.
I saw it at the cinema when it came out. It must have been in the early 80s, something like that.
I think it was, yeah. Great film, though. Great, I mean, you know, great overall series, I think.
Yes.
There's just something so fantastic. There's something so fresh about it. I tweeted about it this week and I said it's just so fresh that there's nothing like it. And I still believe that. You know, say what you will about things like Doctor Who. I genuinely think The Twilight Zone is fresher than Doctor Who because it never feels laboured. These are, you know, late 50s, 60s. And it's so fast-paced telly, captivating telly.
They had no responsibility to a format. They could do something really entirely new every time.
Absolutely.
It's an anthology series. It's an anthology.
Nice lady, that Anne. Anthology.
She's
So that's what I've been watching this week. What about yourself, Nick? What have you been watching this week?
Well, as you know, I went to the cinema to see Stan and Ollie.
And did you enjoy it, is the question.
Well, they worked front of house at the cinema. The film I went to see was the Nutcracker. No,
The Lion
did
King
I enjoy
2,
it?
Simba's Pride.
I did have the great experience of they hadn't got the hot dogs up and running because it was the only screening they were doing was at midday. And they said, "Oh, we haven't got hot dog." I said, "I just really need some hot food." And they said, "Well, look, we'll make it, but we'll bring it to you." So I had sort of like at-seat service. So just as the movie started, the people sitting next to me were absolutely bamboozled to see a man turn up and hand me some cooked food. I felt like I was,
Can't
you know,
knock that,
royalty.
can you, really?
I said, "Oh, thank you very much." And I could tell they were looking at me and giving it the, "Oh, who does he think he is?" Then I proceeded to get ketchup and mustard all over my beard. Anyway, when I got out of the cinema, I found that my beard had been stained yellow by the mustard. I looked like some old smoker. The movie, yes, I think astonishing performances by the two leads, as Stan and Ollie. If I'm going to be finickety, I think Steve Coogan's accent slips. Where's he from originally, Steve Coogan?
Manchester, isn't he?
I was going to say, it slips up north occasionally, and I don't think that's right, some of his vowel sounds. But it's a lovely performance and it's really moving. The friendship is portrayed beautifully. And to be frank, they do recreate some of the classic routines really, really well.
That's what it's been stood
so.
out. That's what they say, the standout thing, isn't it? The attention to detail is very good.
Yeah,
just quickly
brilliant.
Before you carry on, he's from Middleton, Lancashire, but obviously I think his heart is very much in Manchester. And
definitely, yes. That must be inconvenient for him going around the world if his heart's still in Manchester, but presumably with modern surgical techniques.
Lots of wires and things, I think it's fine.
It's wireless. It's a wireless heart.
It's a wireless heart.
No, he is good in it. And those routines, I mean, I'm not a massive Stan and Ollie fan, Laurel and Hardy fan, but I have laughed at their stuff. And whenever I see their sketches, I always laugh, you know.
Oh,
the one that springs
love
to
their
mind
work.
is it's a long distance from Atlanta, Georgia. Do you know that one?
Yeah.
Where the phone rings and Stan Laurel picks up the phone and just says, "It sure is." He said,
all these gags, like slapstick comedy as well, for me is such a huge part of my life. I love it to bits. It's really is something I hold strongly. I mean, I was watching a thing, as you know, I'm a big fan of the Chuckle Brothers. Watching a thing recently where
I can't go with you there.
In the worst, it's a generational thing
to me,
isn't it?
to you.
But Paul Chuckle, in the lead up to this film, was on the radio talking about it and saying, you can't with slapstick and with visual comedy, you can't make it funny. It either is funny or it isn't funny.
So true.
He said that if somebody falls over, that's the comedy. Laurel and Hardy were masters of doing that. If you fall over, that's funny. But if you fall over in a funny way and try to make it look silly, it's not funny. And he said that's where they're truly class, is their ability to be effortlessly funny.
Yes.
And that, with the Chuckle Brothers growing up, was what they mastered, is that they were effortlessly funny and introduced comedy like Laurel and Hardy, the core comedy, in an accessible way for children. And that's what I grew up now to appreciate Laurel and Hardy because of those. And Norman Wisdom, another person.
Oh yeah, I loved Norman
good.
Wisdom as a kid, and my parents liked Norman Wisdom. The trouble is, they hated Laurel and Hardy, and they always said, "Oh, it's rubbish, that American rubbish," and all that. And I kind of liked it a bit in spite of them, and even found them laughing at it sometimes. So, I remember thinking, but you don't think it's funny, but you are laughing, and that's the thing. You see, they just were so bloody funny. They were really smart. They said that some of the verbal comedy is good as well. And just the effortlessness, the appearance of effortlessness is amazing. And so some of those bits when they reenacted it actually reduced me to tears.
Well, it is, there's a certain magic that Laurel and Hardy bring to the silver screen, but worldwide there's an ownership. Everybody feels like Laurel and Hardy are one of their own. It's their American comedy, but everybody feels it. Laurel and Hardy, it's the same, I think, nowadays as somebody like Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean is a huge international phenomenon, because people don't see it as it's, they just assume, they say this is a great comedy.
And funnily enough, the British, or perhaps the English, are very snobby about it, aren't they? I mean, I've sort of been brought up to be very disparaging of Mr. Bean, but like everything else that Rowan Atkinson did, but that is what he is internationally famous for, his slapstick Mr. Bean stuff. And when Ben was much younger, we used to show him some of the Mr. Bean stuff, because I think he'd seen some on YouTube and liked it. And I'm watching it really for the first time, most of it, just thinking, this is so incredibly good. I mean, I find slapstick a little bit frustrating. I do find comedy that is that when things always go wrong, I find it a bit crushing after a while. But Stan and Ollie are just amazing. I would say about the film that it's startlingly mediocre a lot of the time.
Right.
In the choices that are made in the script. The script is, I sound like an enormous pillock, but the script seemed to me very pedestrian. But there again, if they're just reporting what happens, I don't know, I thought and I thought it was startlingly mediocre in the way it was directed as well. There was no flair to it. It was just very much, here's the setup, we're filming it. But maybe I'm looking for something too sophisticated. I think it does deliver. And the funny thing about the movie is, the more I think about it after having seen it, the more I like it in retrospect, and I really want to see it again. And the perhaps I shouldn't. Everyone knows that their tour of the UK and Ireland was the last thing they did together, and Oliver Hardy died about a year later. So the ending is extremely moving, because you feel, I wasn't sure about the history of them and what happened at the end, and they sort of show their last performance together with Oliver Hardy obviously very ill, but still giving his all. But they're close up on him, and you can see how exhausted he is and how he's sweating and how he's pushing himself further. And there's like a dance routine that they'd not been doing because he was ill, and he would just play the ukulele, and Stan Laurel would do the really go over the top with the dance to compensate for the fact there was only one of them dancing. But just as they go on at the end, Hardy turns to Laurel and says, "We'll do the dance." And he goes, "You sure?" And he does it, and you watch the whole dance, which they do perfectly, but you just think, God, he's going to die any second. This is going to kill him. And you're so relieved at the end when it doesn't.
When he gets through it.
Oh. And the depiction of friendship is second to none, actually. So in spite of all the sort of slightly snipey things I've said there, I do recommend it.
I'd love to see it. I must get round to doing so.
It doesn't blow you away, but it's a slow burn. You can see how it's affecting me emotionally, can't you? It's just, I think one of the problems with it, is it's a very sad film. It does celebrate friendship, but it's the end of their story. And there's a lot of unfulfilled dreams and injustice and making do and putting up with and all that kind of thing in it. So
it's bittersweet.
Yes, but in a way, the ending does kind of make your heart sing.
Oh.
So lovely. I also proceeded with the Beiderbecke affair. And I, as Benji knows, I delayed the recording of this podcast because I was just finishing the last episode because I thought I've got to finish it, and it just ran 10 minutes longer than I had. So Benji's been very accommodating. It's just everything we said about episode 1 and 50 million times more.
It's class, isn't it? It's absolute class.
And it has the best ever ending of anything. It's so satisfying and covers everything without being trite or... It's just Alan Plater. What a great writer.
I'm really excited to see how many of our listeners have given it a go, having not seen it before.
Yeah.
So I'd be very keen to see what people think of it.
What's so brilliant about it is that the music often belies what, goes against what the atmosphere is. There's some quite tense, dark stuff in the last episode, but the music is... the music has an ironic twist the whole time, and that fusion of that and the performances and the writing and the brilliant way it's directed, it just all comes together and hits the sweet spot, really. The ending, the slow motion running, the 2 versions of the slow motion running.
So it's just it's
fantastic.
A tour de force, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Absolute tour de force.
And I do remember, I didn't know where this, unless it's a quote from something else, I'm exposing my ignorance, where this comes from, where what's the name of the actor who plays the world weary teacher?
Oh, who died recently?
Yes.
Gosh, I can see his face. Dudley Sutton.
Dudley. Oh God, I thought I'd made that up. Dudley Sutton, when he says to all the kids, when he's just crossed that Trevor and Jill aren't there, he just says, "Get on and eat your food" or something, and. The kids in public schools, that's private schools, privately educated here in the UK, he said, all they have is the prospect of unnatural sex and the prospect of ruling the country one day.
Cutting, isn't it?
Grossly offensive to many people, but I remember that quote. I don't know whether that's a quote from someone else, but I was surprised to hear it now. I thought, God, is that where I've got that quote from? Okay, I mustn't go on too much about the Beiderbecke. I've been catching up with the Orville, caught up with the latest episodes of that, enjoying it, but slightly put off by my wife constantly picking holes in the plot because she's not quite got the joke. Star Trek, the original series, I just always a good standby. Watched The Lights of Zetar, or Zetar, can't remember how it's pronounced, where Scotty's in love with a girl who gets possessed by a sentient cloud.
As happens to a lot of relationships these days, doesn't it? It's happened to me a few times.
Well, it's felt like it's happened to me a few times. I've looked at these women and thought, I think you're possessed by a sentient cloud.
And then they leave you, and you think, was it something I said?
They fire the phasers, and there we are. Yes, so I thought, sorry, someone was moving a bin around outside. I thought the end of the world was occurring. Could be that, might be that. This could be the last podcast anyone will ever hear. Scotty's attitude towards her is so staggeringly patronising that feminists everywhere will scream and raise their fists to the screen. It's just, I was just thinking, oh, guys, all right, lassie, it's just space sickness. And he's so sick-makingly in love, and she just completely behaves like it's lovely, but at least everyone else on the Enterprise is a little bit sick and tired of him being such a pillock. I mean, Kirk orders him not to go to sick bay, and then when he speaks to Scotty, or when he calls sick bay, Scotty answers, and he says, oh, am I going to find Dr. McCoy in the engine room? He's really teed off about it. And that's a direct... Scotty directly defies Kirk because he's thinking with a part of his body not normally associated with thought. Anyway,
which Kirk won't like that.
The other thing that just strikes me, which is really unfair, this is where William Shatner got his reputation for being fat, because he is overweight in this series, the third series of Star Trek. He is overweight. Yeah. It's so noticeable watching the earlier ones. They actually use a shot from an earlier episode as an establishing shot where he's skinny. Then they cut to the latest footage where he's got, several pounds more.
Oh, Christ.
But that's what happens when you become...
He's filling that suit, isn't he?
Oof, yeah. I remember William Ware Tice, the designer of the Star Trek uniforms. I did an interview with him once, and he made a huge excuse for William Shatner. He says, Bill has the kind of rib cage that kind of angles outwards, so if he puts on even the smallest amount of weight, it's really noticeable.
So yeah, just stop eating the stop drinking too much beer.
It's the problem. If you get successful, he was just a jobbing actor. He got successful. Well, you get invited out to lots of big meals and stuff, don't you? And also you put on more weight as you get older, if you're that way inclined. That's not the right expression. But anyway, enough of this nonsense.
No, I'm not inclined to age, I'm afraid. I stay the same.
Yeah. Comes to us all. Shall I read out this first email sent to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com?
I think you should.
Subject podcastery. It was sent on the 27th of January at 8:52. I think this probably came from America then, did it? I don't know. Anyway, from Paul Hyder, who hides. Hi, Benji and Nick. Just wanted to write and say how much I enjoy the podcast. Cheers, mate. I've only been listening for a couple of months, but the joy of podcasts is that you can catch up, and that's just what I've been doing. Yeah, that's the thing. That's why we don't really make a big thing about when each one's released. They're not time reliant, unless, of course, one happens before the apocalypse and one after. I don't always remember the shows you feature, but more than once your delightful ramblings has set off bells in my memory. And I've realised that I did actually watch the show in question, and then of course the memories come flooding back. Thank you for that. Oh, Paul, you make my heart sing, because that's just what we intend. I found, in inverted commas, you via the Jerry Anderson podcast. Thanks, Jamie. I did send this email to Jamie and say,
what a plug.
Yeah.
Great.
And so my favourite part of your show is when you ring up Jamie Anderson and annoy him. Love it. Keep the casts coming. I'm fingers crossed for Blake's 7 and Sapphire and Steel reviews one day. Good point. Best wishes, Paul brackets Hyder, sent from SE China.
There we go.
Southeast China.
So our first listener from China, maybe. Who knows?
I don't know. Did we not have someone else? Oh no, that was somewhere else in the east. Anyway, he said, sounding like someone from the British Empire. Somewhere not in Britain. No,
somewhere else in the east. So we got here one here from Martin Watton, sent 28th of the 1st, 2019 at 1:12 in the afternoon. No, in the morning. Crikey, so it must be somewhere else. Hi, Benji, or is it Benji and Nick? Who knows? Another wonderful show. I like to say that you are not alone in your love of this show. That's right, because the subject is the Beiderbecke affair. Having enjoyed it upon first transmission, it repeats and now owning it on DVD. However, Benji, or is it Benji, you are alone in your pronunciation of Alan Plater's birthplace of Jarrow. That's Ja and not Ya, as in the march. Yours respectfully, Martin. Yes, a few people on Twitter actually pulled me up on that one. Do you know what? I can tell you precisely why I think I went straight to Yarrow instead of Jarrow, and that is
the guy from Death to the Daleks.
My favourite character from Death to the Daleks, Bilal, is played by Arnold Yarrow, and so my immediate subconscious is to say Yarrow. And quite frankly, if anybody from the administration of Jarrow is listening, I suggest you change your name to pay tribute to Arnold Yarrow.
But listen, the thing is, Martin, we is just reading this stuff out, you know what I mean? We're just looking at it for the first time and reading it out, and that's why we sometimes mess it up. Original message, the subject was competition. Now here's another competition that a wonderful listener is suggesting, and we're going to take you up on it. Shane Dunphy, who's written to us before, often very movingly about subjects. Anyway, so Shane, and he wrote on the 31st of January at 20:44, which is a good time in the evening when everything's settled down in the house.
So next time you get to that time of day, when you look at your clock, just think of Nicholas Briggs sitting comfortably in his chair, feeling very accomplished that everything is in order.
That's just about when I've managed to get my son to bed and he's already going, "Mummy, I can't sleep." I thought, perhaps that's because you're playing computer games all the time. Anyway, hi Benji and Nick. My next book is being published on the 7th of February. Yes, you see, Shane is a writer of some note. It's called If She Returned, and is the third book in my series of crime novels featuring the emotionally damaged criminologist Duncan Dunnigan. I'd like to offer it, and the first 2 books in the series, the whole set in other words, as a prize to listeners of your podcast. Yeah, I think fans of the Benji and Nick show would like Dunnigan. He is a fan of many of the TV shows you chaps enjoy. In If She Returned, he watches an episode of Randall and Hochberg Deceased and an episode of Captain Scarlet. He is a huge Doctor Who fan. In fact, he has a framed poster of the second Doctor hanging above the fireplace in his flat. I love him, and often chats to it when he is trying to sort through a problem or work out the meaning behind a clue. Jamie, as if the Doctor might answer back. So I think people will identify with him. I'll be delighted to sign the books for the winner, if they so wish. Yes. Well, we'll try and make that. Anyway, the question is, what was the name of the series which Dunnigan watches with his friend Miley in book 1 of the series after she vanished? Oh, sorry. I'll start that again. A question then. What was the name of the series which Dunnigan watches with his friend Miley in book 1 of the series after she vanished, in which Patrick Troughton regenerates into John Pertwee's third Doctor in the final episode? There you are. That's the question. Send your answers to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com. And the closing...
talking the general series or the serial?
The serial, yeah. The name of the series. Otherwise, it would just be Doctor Who. Would be
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, precisely.
So the story title, as we Who maniacs would say. So the closing date is I think the closing date is going to be Friday, the 1st of March. There we are. Just making a note of that, actually. Excuse me while I just write this down, folks. Shane Dunphy Pod Comp closing Friday 1st of March. I don't know why I started to write the word March with an S, but there you go. Smarch.
Smarch. You're a bit of a smarch.
By the way, Shane says, I thoroughly enjoyed the podcast, by the way. I couldn't believe it when you reviewed the Beiderbecke affair. I remember watching it. My recollection is it was on lunchtime when I was at home ill from school at some point. Well, I mean, you're watching from Ireland, aren't you? The schedule would have been different. And I loved it. But no one had ever heard of the show when I mentioned the series in the intervening years. And I become convinced I'd imagined the whole thing. I'm so glad it wasn't a Mandela effect type of situation. Don't even raise the Mandela effect nonsense, because I can now seek out the box set and watch it all again. Oh, do, Shane, honestly. It's fantastic. I refer the honourable gentleman to the gushing I did earlier, some moments ago. Anyway, I hope you're not snowed in or suffering too badly from the impact of yet another bout of unseasonable weather. Well, yes, as we record this, which will be a couple of weeks before you listen to it, I imagine, folks. Yes, it has been snowing here. Any snow there?
A little bit, not a lot, to be honest. Do you know what? Not a lot. Nothing. Well, they closed the school today. To the pub anyway. That's for sure.
No. They closed the school today.
Did they?
So, yeah. So Ben came running upstairs, very happy.
Oh, I used to love snow days, and I remember I used to when I was at school. I went to a very strict Catholic secondary school, And I'm not a Catholic, so that was an interesting experience.
Yes.
But,
did they burn you at the stake by any
They
chance?
did whenever it snowed. Yes,
Catholics
but I remember
like doing things like that. Well, they used to. I mean, back in history,
back in the olden days. But I remember sitting there, the radio, and they'd say, so and so primary school is shut, so and so secondary school is shut, and then I'd sit there and just be waiting for them to mention my school, and they never did. They would always stay open on those days, and of course people came from all over to go to this school, and so half the people were like, I'm not going in because I've got to get the train or I've got to get the bus. The buses aren't running. But muggins over here who live near the school had to go in. It was rubbish. I know, terrible, isn't it?
Do you know, I'm told the reason they closed our local school is not because the pupils can't get in, but the teachers can't. Because none of the teachers, or loads of the teachers, don't live locally, which I think shows a lack of commitment.
Lack of commitment to learning. Do your jobs,
so that's why they can't have any school today, because the teachers can't make it because they live in outlying areas or in other towns, Whereas this town is fine. I mean, there's a bit of snow on the roofs. Well, it's all melted now, but there was. It looked fairly delightful in a Christmas card sort of way this morning.
One of my teacher friends on Facebook today said, oh, I'm just waiting to see if the school's going to be closed, any updates. And then I just saw this comment on there saying, right, well, that's past my time of caring now. I'm just going to assume it's not on. I'm going back to bed. So if they want me in, I'm not coming in. Good night, everybody. And that was it. And just went to bed. I thought, well, fair play. All right, live the life.
They ought to have excuses like the ones in the Beiderbecke affair when they phone in and say that she's got malaria and he's got PMT. They said the key is to make the excuse so ludicrous they'll never question it. But I think that suggesting that a man has got premenstrual tension is pushing it a little bit.
Just a little bit, yes.
Well, no, I can see some contexts in which that would work. Looking in woodwork, that was what he taught as well. Just distracted myself with stupid random thoughts. By the way, I should just say that Shane Dunphy did very politely say warmest good wishes. Shane Dunphy also writing as S.A. Dunphy. Anyway, well, that's a nice prize, isn't it? Don't forget, enter that competition. Podcast at nicholasbriggs.com. You've got nothing to lose and
everything to gain.
Some interesting comments. Now, let's see what Jamie Anderson's up to.
Oh, I could ask him another would you rather question. They're always
Definitely.
Good.
Oh, FaceTime unavailable.
Oh, what a swine.
What were you going to ask him?
Well, I've just got up the random would you rather question generator here.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. I have to ask you one instead.
Well, I could, ask him later and report back.
That's a good idea, actually. Okay.
We're not having much luck with Jamie, are we? He's a very busy boy.
He is indeed. Okay, would you rather...
Yeah. I could text him. Yeah.
Would you rather...
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of a very good one. This is an interesting philosophical one. Would you rather live in a utopia as a normal person or in a dystopia but you are the supreme ruler?
Goodness me. Would you rather live in a utopia as a normal person or a dystopia as a supreme being?
As a supreme ruler.
Was that?
Anything with the title supreme always sounds good, doesn't it, though?
Chicken Supreme.
Supreme ruler. At ease.
I remember a review in Doctor Who magazine rather flatteringly said that I'd brought them a brand new dish, Dalek Supreme.
I like that. Dalek Supreme.
Right, I've sent that to him. Maybe he could...
Maybe he'll grace us with a response.
Say bog off, Briggs.
Bog off, Briggs. Would you rather eat a box of dry spaghetti noodles or a cup of uncut rice, Nick?
Box of dry spaghetti noodles. Or cup of uncut rice?
Yeah.
I think I'll go for the noodles.
Yeah, so would I. There's something...
I think the rice might kill you.
Well, that's true.
The noodles you could at least crunch up.
Yeah, and I don't think they taste that bad. You know, we've all had a little nibble of uncooked pasta once. We've all done it. Come on.
We've all done it, haven't we?
We've all done it.
Oh, right. Jamie's answering, I think.
Oh, exciting.
Utopia normal, he says. There we are.
Very wise. Wise, safe choice, I think.
He's probably now texting to say, now stop bothering me, I'm doing something very important. I'm not a total git, he says.
Very wise.
Right, there we are. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Jamie Anderson is not a total git.
So some of these are classy. Would you rather find a
shock at that?
Would you rather find a fiver on the floor or find all of your missing socks?
A fiver. You can always buy more socks. You could buy more socks with the fiver.
Logic,
right.
He's a logician.
We're not going to be choosing what we're going to discuss next week because we're going to tell you something that we're going to do next week, which has been, by popular demand, a low level of popular demand. What's that mean? Over the last few months, where people have been talking about how we should do commentaries of stuff. So we're going to do a commentary, a Benji and Nick Show special commentary for... Benji, tell them.
Episode 1, and maybe we will do more, of Death to the Daleks.
The Earth creatures must be exterminated. Fire on my command, fire, fire, fire.
Wait a minute, wait, you can't.
Total extermination.
That's revealed the cliffhanger for anyone watching next week.
Just in case they didn't know. What was it? Oh, what was that great clip in there? When the Dalek's backing away into the spaceship.
Yes.
You know when it says,
The missiles will destroy all life and render further landings here impossible.
like that.
That was Benji moving away from the mic. Yes, it's like the Dalek's just going, up yours.
Yeah, it's like, we've done it this time, you bastards.
I won't bother killing you now. I'm going to devise a method of killing you that will allow you somehow to escape. Right.
As soon as the door shuts, of course, at least they don't. At least they've got the bombs or something, is it? At least they don't have the bombs.
At least they don't have the perineum.
The perineum, that's it. At least they don't have the perineum, yeah.
And she goes, oh, of course, yes, we put sand in the bags.
And Galloway's
the Daleks
up
are so
there.
stupid, they can't tell the difference between a life-saving mineral and sand.
Inject him with sand, it will save his life.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, that is just sand.
What? You never told me. No.
Have you ever Googled perineum?
Well, it's like it's a different emphasis on perineum, isn't it?
Yes. Which, for anybody that...
There's a bit of the body that's naughty.
There's a naughty bit of the body.
That's Terry Nation.
Sandwiched between two naughty bits of the body, one should say.
That's Terry Nation having a laugh at everyone's expense.
I think
anyway,
so.
So that's what we'll be doing next time. How exciting is that on a scale of 1 to 5 million?
5 million straight away.
10, I'd say.
Not a click nor a tick.
Oh, I can't wait. Only I can get my DVD player to work. Right. Ta-ta.
Tally ho. Bye-bye.
Pressing stop now. Ka-chunk.